At 70 years old, Kris Jenner, the matriarch who built an empire from chaos, is finally revealing the truth behind the glamorous facade that defined her life. For decades, she's been the mastermind of one of the most influential families in entertainment history. From keeping up with the Kardashians to multi-million-dollar business deals, Kris became a symbol of control, success, and unstoppable ambition. But now, behind the polished image and designer suits, lies a story few could have imagined. One marked by loneliness, loss, and a pain that even fame and fortune couldn't heal. Kris Jenner's name has always been synonymous with power. She turned her daughters into global icons and herself into one of the most successful businesswomen of her generation. Yet, what the cameras didn't show was the cost of that control. The sleepless nights, the broken relationships, and the sacrifices made in silence. For years, she carried the weight of her family's reputation, often putting everyone else's happiness above her own. But recently, as Kris reflected on her life approaching 70, she made a series of emotional confessions that shocked even those closest to her. "I've built everything I ever dreamed of," she said softly, "but sometimes I wonder what it cost me." Now, the woman who once seemed unshakable is revealing the heartbreak behind her strength. From the tragedies she's endured to the private regrets she's kept hidden for decades. Because beneath the empire, beneath the fame, lies a mother, a woman, and a human being who has finally decided to tell her truth. Long before the world knew her as the momager of Hollywood, Kris Jenner was just a young woman trying to survive. In a world that seemed to change faster than she could keep up. Born Kristen Mary Houghton in 1955 in San Diego, she grew up in a middle-class home where ambition wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. Her parents divorced when she was still a teenager, an event that quietly shaped her understanding of resilience. "I learned early," Kris once said, "that nothing in life stays the same. You either fall apart or you rebuild." She chose the latter. Her first marriage to high-profile attorney Robert Kardashian in 1978 introduced her to a new world of wealth, influence, and expectation. Together they had 4 children, Kourtney, Kim, Khloe, and Rob, and for a while it seemed like the perfect family. But behind the smiles and the Beverly Hills lifestyle, cracks were forming. Robert's devotion to his work often left Kris feeling isolated, and her youthful desire for adventure clashed with the structured world of law and social politics. "I was young and restless," she would later admit, "and I made mistakes that changed everything." Those mistakes led to one of the most publicized divorces in early Hollywood society. Kris's affair, which she later spoke about with regret, ended her marriage but not her spirit. She took the heartbreak and turned it into determination. "That was the moment I decided I would never let anyone else control my life again," she said. After her divorce, Kris's life took a new turn when she met Olympic gold medalist Bruce Jenner, now Caitlyn Jenner. The two married in 1991, and Kris suddenly found herself managing not just a blended family of 6 children, but also a new kind of fame. Her natural gift for organization and business became her survival tool. When Bruce's career stalled, Kris reinvented him as a motivational speaker, managing his bookings and brand. It was the first time she'd realized her true calling, not as a celebrity, but as the architect behind One Dot. By the mid-2000s, her children were growing up, and Kris saw an opportunity that would change television forever. After a homemade video scandal involving Kim Kardashian went viral, Kris turned what could have destroyed their reputation into an opportunity for reinvention. With a business instinct few could match, she pitched Keeping Up with the Kardashians to E! Network, and the rest is history. What began as a simple reality show turned into a cultural phenomenon. The Kardashians became household names, and Kris became the driving force behind one of the most successful entertainment empires in history. She negotiated brand deals, secured endorsement contracts, and built billion-dollar businesses for her children, all while turning the family name into a global brand. Yet, while the cameras captured the glitz and glamour, they missed the sleepless nights, the constant fear of failure, and the emotional cost of being the foundation for everyone else's dreams. Kris often described herself as the glue of the family, but even glue can crack under pressure. Everyone saw the smiles, she once reflected, but they didn't see the tears in the car after the cameras stopped rolling. By the time she reached her late 60s, Kris had achieved more than most could ever imagine. She had turned scandal into success and pain into power. But deep down, there were things even she couldn't control: the loss of love, the strain of family drama, and the quiet ache of time passing faster than she could manage. As she approached 70, Kris Jenner began to reflect not just on what she had built, but on what she had lost along the way. The world saw her as indestructible, but those closest to her knew that behind the diamonds and designer dresses, she carried a heart that had weathered more storms than most could bear. As keeping up with the Kardashians grew into a worldwide phenomenon, Kris Jenner's life became an open book. Every laugh, every fight, every tear, all captured for millions to see. But what the audience didn't know was that behind the production lights and designer wardrobes, Kris was quietly unraveling. Fame had made her family untouchable in the eyes of the public, yet it also created an invisible cage she couldn't escape from. Running an empire of 6 ambitious children meant every day brought a new crisis. Whether it was a leaked photo, a relationship scandal, or the constant scrutiny of the media, Kris had to manage not only her own image but also the emotional well-being of her children. "It's like juggling fire," she once said. "If one burns out, the whole act collapses." The first major crack appeared when her marriage to Bruce Jenner began to crumble. Years of distance, public rumors, and separate goals finally pushed them apart. The divorce, finalized in 2015, was emotionally devastating for Kris, but what came next shook her to the core: Bruce's transition to Caitlyn Jenner. While she publicly expressed support, privately Kris felt blindsided, confused, and even betrayed. "It wasn't about not accepting," she said later. "It was about realizing that the person I had built a life with, the father of my children, had been living a truth I never fully knew." The media frenzy that followed tore open every wound she'd tried to keep hidden. Paparazzi camped outside her home, tabloids twisted her words, and online critics painted her as heartless or controlling. "I was losing control of the story," Kris admitted, "and that's something I had spent my whole life trying to protect." Her children, meanwhile, were each battling their own public and private struggles. Kim faced relentless scrutiny over her relationships. Khloe endured heartbreak after heartbreak. And Kendall and Kylie were growing up in a world where privacy didn't exist. "I tried to hold everyone together," Kris said in an emotional interview. "But there were nights I'd sit in my room and just cry, asking God if it was worth it." Even her health began to reflect the toll. Years of stress and sleepless nights led to anxiety, exhaustion, and moments where she felt she couldn't go on. But like always, Kris refused to show weakness. To the world, she remained composed, a vision of power and poise. "I'd put on my makeup, fix my hair, and smile," she once said, "because if I didn't, the whole family would fall apart." Behind that smile, though, was a woman wrestling with loneliness. The more success she built, the fewer genuine relationships she had. Many of her closest friends drifted away, intimidated by her fame or tired of the constant cameras. "I realized that people loved what I represented," Kris confessed, "not necessarily who I was." As the years passed, keeping up with the Kardashians started losing its spark. The public had grown used to their story, and even the family began feeling the weight of constant exposure. By the time the final season aired in 2021, Kris's emotions were raw. Watching the show end was like watching a chapter of her life close, a chapter that had defined her for nearly 2 decades. But even after the show ended, the chaos didn't stop. Family disagreements became headlines, and rumors of financial tension and health scares followed her everywhere. Every time she tried to take a step back, the world pulled her back in. She had created an empire, but at the cost of her peace. "I built something that changed entertainment," Kris once said softly. "But sometimes I wonder if I lost myself in the process." As she turned 70, Kris began confronting the reality she had avoided for years, that success can be both a blessing and a burden. The woman who had made millions laugh and gasp on TV was, behind closed doors, just a mother yearning for quiet love and a little forgiveness from herself. By the time Kris Jenner reached her 70s, the cracks that had quietly formed within her family began to widen into painful fractures. What once seemed like unbreakable bonds now carried years of resentment, jealousy, and emotional exhaustion. The empire Kris had built with so much passion was still thriving publicly, but privately, the price of fame had never been clearer. Kris had always taken pride in being the glue that held her family together. But as her daughters grew into independent billionaires, the power dynamic shifted. Each child had their own brand, their own team, their own version of success, and that independence slowly began to push Kris out of the center. "I wanted them to fly," she once confessed, "but I didn't realize how lonely it would feel when they didn't need me to guide them anymore." Behind the camera, tension brewed. Kim, often seen as Kris's right hand, was becoming increasingly busy with her own legal studies, business ventures, and personal life. Khloe struggled with heartbreak after heartbreak, feeling that her mother's guidance sometimes came second to business strategy. Kourtney, meanwhile, grew tired of the show's never-ending drama and accused her mother of prioritizing fame over family peace. "It's always about the brand," Kourtney said in one heated episode. "But sometimes, Mom, it's not about money. It's about love." Those words haunted Kris more than she'd ever admit. She had always believed that success would protect her children from pain, but now she realized that wealth could not shield them from emotional scars. "All I ever wanted was for them to have more than I did," Kris once said tearfully. "But maybe in giving them everything, I forgot to teach them what really matters." Then came Caitlyn Jenner's memoir, a release that reopened every old wound. The book included painful details about their marriage and painted Kris in an unflattering light. It wasn't just the words that hurt, but the betrayal of trust. "We built a life together," Kris said on an episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, and to see it rewritten without compassion was heartbreaking. The media ate it up. For months, every headline seemed to pit the Jenners against the Kardashians, feeding rumors of estrangement and conflict. Kris, as always, tried to maintain her composure, but those close to her saw the emotional toll. She was tired, a friend revealed. Not physically, but soul-tired. Like she'd been fighting for everyone else's happiness for decades and forgot her own. As the family expanded, with grandchildren, business empires, and new marriages, Kris's role shifted again. She became less the momager and more the matriarch, a figure of wisdom and nostalgia rather than command. Yet, the transition wasn't easy. Watching her children make decisions she disagreed with, from public feuds to risky relationships, tore at her heart. "You raise them to be strong," she said, "and then you have to let them fall." There were moments of reconciliation, too. Quiet dinners without cameras, heartfelt apologies, tears shared over coffee. But they were often followed by fresh controversies. The pressure of fame was a shadow that refused to lift. Even in her most peaceful moments, Kris lived with the constant fear that another headline could undo years of hard work. She began spending more time at home, away from flashing cameras, cherishing moments with her grandchildren. "They're my piece," she said once, smiling softly. "They remind me what this was all supposed to be about: family, laughter, and love." But even those moments were bittersweet, reminders of how fast time was moving and how much she had given to keep everyone else's dreams alive, deep inside. Kris carried a private grief, the quiet pain of being both celebrated and misunderstood. To the world, she was still the sharp, stylish powerhouse who turned her family name into an empire. But behind closed doors, she was a woman who had endured love lost, friendships broken, and children who sometimes forgot she was human too. As the cameras faded and the world moved on to the next big celebrity story, Kris Jenner was left reflecting on the legacy she would leave behind, not just as a businesswoman, but as a mother who sacrificed nearly everything for her family's success. Today, as Kris Jenner stands at 70, the glamorous life that once revolved around flashing cameras and red carpets has slowed down to something quieter and far more reflective. She still smiles for interviews, still appears at high-profile events, and still manages parts of her family's ever-expanding empire, but her priorities have shifted. The once unstoppable momager now spends her mornings in peaceful routines, surrounded by her grandchildren, her garden, and the echoes of a life that was anything but ordinary. But beneath that polished exterior is a woman who has weathered storms that could have broken anyone else. For decades, Kris carried the weight of being the anchor for one of the most famous families in the world. She was the manager, the mother, the peacemaker, the strategist, but somewhere in that balancing act, she often forgot herself. "I spent so much time managing everyone else's happiness," she said once in a rare emotional interview, "that I didn't realize I'd lost track of my own." The years have taken their toll. Her health has become a growing concern, and though she remains active, Kris has admitted to facing bouts of fatigue and stress-related issues. The fast-paced world she built around herself rarely allowed rest, and now her body reminds her of every sleepless night, every fight, and every sacrifice she made for the family brand. Friends say she's learned to slow down, to cherish sunsets, home-cooked dinners, and laughter that isn't recorded for TV. But letting go hasn't been easy. Fame for Kris has always been both a blessing and a burden. Even when she craves privacy, the spotlight finds her. Even when she wishes for quiet, someone always wants a quote, a photo, a headline. Sometimes, she admitted, "I wonder what it would have been like to just be Kris Houghton again. A simple life, no cameras, just love." Yet, despite everything, Kris refuses to see her story as tragic. "Every chapter taught me something," she said. "About forgiveness, about strength, about starting over when the world thinks you're finished." It's that resilience, that unyielding spirit that has kept her family together through heartbreak, scandal, and reinvention. Her children, once her protégés, now look to her as a symbol of what it means to endure. Kim calls her the strongest woman I know. Chloe says, "She's the reason I never give up." Even Kourtney, who once clashed with her, has expressed gratitude for her mother's sacrifices. Slowly, the family that had splintered over fame has found its way back to the core Kris always wanted: love. In her quiet moments. Kris often looks back at old family videos, birthdays, Christmas mornings, and the early days of keeping up with the Kardashians. She smiles, sometimes laughs, sometimes wipes away tears. "It's strange," she said once. "The moments that seemed small then, those were the ones that mattered most." At 70, Kris Jenner's life stands as both a cautionary tale and an inspiration. She showed the world how to turn chaos into opportunity, but she also learned that success without peace is a hollow victory. Her story reminds us that behind every empire lies a human heart that breaks, heals, and keeps going. The tragedy of Kris Jenner isn't in her mistakes or the scandals that followed her. It's in how the world often forgets the woman behind the legend. But maybe, just maybe, that's how she prefers it. Because while fame built her legacy, love for her children, her grandchildren, and the life she created from nothing is what will define it. So as the lights fade and the cameras stop rolling, Kris Jenner finally stands where she always belonged, not in the middle of a show, but in the quiet of her own story. A woman who lost and rebuilt, who fell and rose again, and who proved that even in heartbreak, there is beauty, and even in endings, there can still be grace.